All right, today we're going to talk about some of the biggest downsides of living in Wesley Chapel, Florida. Here we go. I'm Sam, and this is the Living in Tampa channel, and we make these videos for you about what it's like to live in the Tampa Bay area. We also have a team of realtors that are here and ready to help you. We would love to hear from you and have a chance to earn your real estate business. Rain or shine, we're here to serve you. I'm kind of in the rain a little bit, so it's just me being making dad jokes. You know, once you have kids, you start making dad jokes a lot faster than you expect. But I'm out here in Wesley Chapel right now, a new community, a little DR Horton community called Summerstone. You see it here on the map. One of my clients, Matt, who I talked about previously, bought a house out here. We're doing kind of final inspection, and they're pretty far behind on stuff, so we're just making a big list for them. So during the pandemic, people were really drawn to Wesley Chapel. I think a lot of this had to do with a couple big communities that were going in, Epperson and Murata, and a lot of the marketing dollars that were being spent in other areas to draw people to these neighborhoods. Wesley Chapel overlaps with a couple different towns, mostly Zephyr Hills and then San Antonio, where that Epperson Murata neighborhood goes into to the north. Wesley Chapel's pretty spread out, and I mean, I've talked about unincorporated areas of Florida, but also the Tampa area and kind of how complex they get, and Wesley Chapel's no exception to that. Sometimes you'll have houses that seem like they're in the middle of Wesley Chapel, but they'll have a Zephyr Hills address. Kind of confusing, because then the houses all around them have Wesley Chapel addresses. I don't understand some of those nuances. But a lot of this Wesley Chapel buzz was during the pandemic. People were kind of drawn to the suburbs, drawn away from cities, and then drawn to Epperson, a couple of these like very specific Crystal Lagoon communities. And during that time, Wesley Chapel was one of the fastest growing towns in all of Florida. So how big is it? Wesley Chapel is about 60,000 people. The perception of it around here often is that it's quite a bit bigger. And the borders of it, as I said, kind of merge into Zephyr Hills and San Antonio, but also into Land O'Lakes and Lutz and even Tampa, and the new Tampa area specifically. All those lines are kind of blurry. But as I said, today we are talking about downsides. So don't move to Wesley Chapel if you can't handle these things. Yeah, maybe they're not going to be that big of a deal. They kind of are to me. Number one, distance. We got distance from Tampa, distance from St. Pete, distance to the beaches, distance to Orlando. So we moved recently to Newport Richey, east side of Newport Richey, pretty much in Odessa or Land O'Lakes. It took me 55 minutes to get over here. So you see kind of where the general area of my house is, and like it took 55 minutes to get all the way over here. I was kind of shocked by that. When I lived in Tarpon Springs, it would have taken about the same amount of time, maybe 5 minutes more. Some of that is just because some of the roads are a little bit slower, I guess, but this county is wider than you would imagine, just like Florida is wider than you would often imagine. Okay, and then the main roads in and out. Well, let's talk specifically about distances. So distance to Tampa, some people like to say if you're at Epperson, once you get to I-75, it's 30 minutes to downtown Tampa, or 30 minutes to like Armature Works, which is like Tampa Heights area. That's on the interstate. So getting to the interstate is sometimes the most painful part. Getting out of your neighborhood might take 8 minutes. Getting to the interstate might take another 15 minutes. Then once you're there, it might take 30 minutes to get there if there's no significant traffic. There's a lot of variables in there. So that's I-75 that runs north and south. Also running north and south, Bruce B. Downs Boulevard runs all the way through the Wesley Chapel area, main north-south road going through there. Other than that, as you go a little bit further east, you can go down 301. As you go further west, you can go down 41. 41 goes through Lutz, right through the middle of Lutz, and then up through Land O'Lakes. And then if you go a little further west, like if you're going to the airport, you might take 75 to 275, or you might drive on the Veterans Expressway, go further west. So go like Highway 54, East and West Road, all the way over to the Veterans Expressway. And a lot of our clients, they move here from bigger areas where, a 30 to 50 minute drive isn't that big of a deal. Especially if you live near a big city like New York or something like that. Like going into the city was such a big ordeal. It's less of an ordeal now if you're just this kind of expected distance away. And a lot of people don't move here to go to the beach all the time. A lot of people just want access to the beach. So they want to know that if they're going to go for a day, they can get there pretty easily. So if you want easy access to Tampa, to St. Pete, to the beach, to the airport, even to Orlando, Wesley Chapel is just kind of in the middle of all that. So it's kind of equidistant to all those things, but you got to imagine about an hour driving each way for all those things. You're probably thinking about moving so that you're in the car less, And now everything out here in Wesley Chapel can serve all your needs, but it's still kind of far out here. And that's probably the biggest surprise when our clients visit and they check out Wesley Chapel or they check out Epperson and Murata. They say, wow, it's way out there. Not only is it far east, but it's far north. So that is just something that comes up over and over. Okay, the next downside, 60,000 people. Yeah, it's growing, and we'll talk about some of the ways that it's growing. It's not very big. And now it depends on where you're moving from, whether 60,000 feels big or not. Actually, where we live in Newport Richey is about 150,000, but it's pretty spread out, similar to Wesley Chapel. And as I've said, like those towns that border this whole area feel like your town too. It's not like you really see the differentiation really clearly if you live here. You're going into Lutz, you're going into Land O'Lakes, you're going down into Tampa for all kinds of stuff. But that kind of shows you that Wesley Chapel is not big enough to have all those own things. You need access to all these other towns as a part of them. So we actually considered purchasing a house in Wesley Chapel. Cool house, had a little guest house that was like in this courtyard. The pool was in the middle of the house kind of wrapped around it, and then a detached kind of guest house that I would like use as an office, or we could use as an Airbnb or something. Super cool place. On an acre. You know, the main reason we didn't consider it is because you couldn't see the backyard, and we have little kids that are gonna be running around in the backyard. We wanna be able to see them from the house. So we looked elsewhere, but after we saw that house, and we were like kind of loved this house when we first saw it. Afterward, we were like, okay, we need to go get some food. We went to the shops at Wiregrass, which is like a pretty fancy outdoor mall. Fancy, whatever. Not that fancy, not like Louis Vuitton stores and stuff like that, but well proportioned and put together outdoor mall. And the fact that that was kind of what we had to go to get some food, I just didn't love. Like that kind of suburban vibe where you like go to the shopping area to eat. It just doesn't really feel like a town. It feels like this kind of suburban simulation to me. But we also have clients all the time that say, hey, we're looking for a pretty boring house in a pretty boring town. People have actually said those specific things to me. Like, you talk about cookie cutter, that's what we want. So, okay, I get it. It appeals to a lot of people in all different walks of life. But I just want you to know what you're getting into. And now, I mentioned that I would talk about population growth. Of course, it's been growing, 60,000 plus right now. When they build these big new neighborhoods, it grows more. So Epperson and Murata will be a combined over 4,000 homes, and they're getting pretty close to that. They're building a lot out there still. And Murata's Lagoon is open now, the big 12-acre crystal lagoon, freshwater pool with like a beach and all kinds of cool stuff like that. It's cool. And then Avalon West is adding another 4,000 homes, really close to where I am now. And Avalon West is actually gonna build like a little downtown. They're already like leasing apartments in that little downtown area. Of course, there's more commercial area to fill there, but there are some little areas that are trying to build that kind of town center feel. But that also means more and more growth. So that puts us to point number 3. The final downside of living in the Wesley Chapel area is growing pains. So yeah, there's potential to build this kind of downtown in Avalon West, but it's not there yet, right? You got to wait for all this stuff. They started building these lagoons, those took years. Now some of them are open. All those kind of things just take time. But let's talk about some of the main growing pains you would experience if you lived here. Number 1 is commuting. Commute traffic in and out of this area does slow you down quite a bit, 40 to 50% slowdown on those main thoroughfares. So I-75, Bruce B. Downs, 301, 41. 589 doesn't really slow down, but it's kind of hard to jump over to 589 unless you're like commuting to like the airport area. Other highways that have been built up since this area started growing so much, Highway 54 was kind of extended. This runs east and west. More lanes were added across the whole county. So 54 runs east and west. Then north of that is Highway 52 that goes through the north side of the county. That Highway 52 is like how you can access Murata, the neighborhood up there, like Wesley Chapel, San Antonio. You can also access the new Angeline neighborhood and Land O'Lakes from there, and that runs perpendicular to the 589 expressway. You can see here on the map kind of all of these roads that have been expanded, and they still need work. Those kind of highway expansions take a long time. So part of 52 is like still under major construction, even though they're expanding it. They've given some more access to the 589 expressway and on a couple spots, Ridge Road being one of those where there's going to be a new school. Which schools, that brings up a great point. So Wesley Chapel, some people are drawn to it because of the schools, specifically the southern half of the city. The Wiregrass schools are known to be pretty good. But even though those schools are good, they still are impacted by growth. You know, a lot more people move to those school districts, then the schools have those kind of growing pains, where you might have portable units that are used as classrooms for the time being until the school is able to expand. You know, schools use state and county money. So getting that and spending it and building a new commercial building that's used as a school takes 5 years. All of these kind of things have growing pains. Now, I think what will happen is a lot of pressure in this whole area will be applied to these other areas. So on the north side, Epperson and Murata, these areas, there's a new wave of population coming in, often from states that have better schools than Florida typically has. They're applying this new pressure on the schools, they're applying these new expectations on these schools, and the schools are going to have to meet them. And I think this pressure is good. This pressure on a lot of these systems is good. And honestly, I'm pretty excited about Wesley Chapel and how slowly they are growing. There are other parts of the Tampa area that have grown really fast, like Brandon and Riverview, that grew really fast in like 2005 to 2008, like year over year, crazy growth, crazy fast building, all those kind of things. This area is not growing quite as fast, and they're growing seemingly a little bit more intentionally. Now, it still has impact on the roads and on the schools and on all of this kind of infrastructure. But if you're thinking long-term, then Wesley Chapel can be a really cool place. Honestly, the main reason we didn't consider it is because it felt further from family that's by the water and the water, because we still want to go to the beach pretty regularly. Those are the main reasons that it felt too far for us. And then the third being that kind of like newer suburban vibe, I just don't love. I grew up in such a small town that kind of fancy stuff, it's not even fancy stuff. I get it. I sound like a hick by calling it fancy. Maybe that's just the truth of it. Anyway, we would love to hear from you. If you're interested in this area, interested in any of these surrounding areas in the whole Tampa area, we want to hear from you. The phone number and email are right there on the screen and in the description down below. Thanks for coming by.